Hey kids, we're back here again. I got to do another one. So, when I was a kid, I was a gearhead right from the get go. Mini bikes, the whole bit, and then the car thing. Um, General Motors was always a fascinating company to me because it was so many different models. It was not like Ford where one guy ran the thing, and um, so um, and then the whole GTO thing that DeLorean did without anybody on the 14th floor knowing. I don't know if you know the story, but he was the head of Pontiac division at the time. They were grooming him to be the first, well, the youngest president of General Motors. He takes a Pontiac Tempest in '63 and tells them to put a 326 in it. And they're like, what do takes out Pontiac test track and they're like, why do you want to do this? It's like, this is a housewife's car, had the four cylinder in it. So he says, just do it. So they do it. Then he tells them put a 389 in it, and they're like, too much motor for this car. So he does it anyway. He gets it under the radar, and he gets it because they started making the cars for the model year, I think in July, because they sold them in like late August or September for the '64 model year. So he starts this all on his own. He never got any approval from anybody. So he he gets like a whole bunch of them made, like a few thousand of them made, and then the big shots on the 14th floor heard about it, and they slapped his hands. They said, "All right, you can do it for this year, but that's it." And then the rest is history, of course. So I was pretty much following General Motors and everything at the time, and let me turn this off. I'm getting shitty music now. So I was following General Motors at the time, and John Z was like this up and coming superstar. He was a head of Pontiac. He did the goat. He really hit a home run with that. And then they give him General Motors. So I mean, Chevrolet division. So I read his book. On a clear day, you can see General Motors. So his analogy of putting it is that when you shake the tail of a dinosaur, it takes months for the head to realize it. And that was his analogy about how Chevrolet division was. So he goes to Chevrolet, and the main thing between the American companies and the foreign companies is the American companies are only in it for one reason: make money. So you could never stop. The cardinal sin was shutting down an assembly line. So what the plant managers would do is order like 2 and 3 sets of stamping dies for the fenders, the hoods, the trunks, everything that you had to stamp the metal to, because if the die broke, then the assembly line had to be shut down for, I guess, a week or so till they get a new die. So he starts going around all these Chevrolet plants, and he sees that all these dies are from, like, I guess he was there 70, 68, 67, 66, 65. It's all these dies that they never used because the other ones never broke. So he started I think he started just in time delivery. So I get a job at Mercedes, and I figure that all companies are run the same. Ah, wrong. So um, I'm just befuddled by it's a definite culture shock for me because all these guys that were up fixing the building were all World War II vets, and they couldn't stand Germans. They killed Germans in the war, right? So, and some of these Germans were pretty arrogant about it, like, we're going to come here and do this and that. So, somebody gets wind that there's an American Steinway Mercedes over in the fatherland in the museum. So, somebody gets the great idea, let's ship it to America and put it in the reception area. So, all right. So, again, I get asked to stay to take the car off. It's a beautiful summer night. And so the car shows up in a tractor trailer from, I guess, Port Elizabeth, where they brought him in. So, but it's like it's not a new car carrier. It's just a 53-foot flatbed on a tractor trailer. So there's no way in hell to get it off, right? So this is hysterical. So now you got like 87 guys down there in suits in front of the reception area. Not really that many, but you had quite a few. And you got me, the lowly maintenance guy. So now they're all running around, and I'll leave this one guy's name out because he wore the star in his underwear. And so now, how are you going to get it off? And the truck driver's a Teamster. He doesn't give a shit because this thing is to him is just a piece of shit, right? And so they're asking the truck driver how to get it off, and he just, I don't know, he didn't give a shit. So, and the Germans, they did not understand the Teamster organization at all. They couldn't figure out why this guy didn't care anything about it, and so what they did is now they backed the tractor trailer up to this terrace hill that's going up to the employee parking lot, and now we have to. Nobody knows how this car works, right? There's only one guy, and he's not there at the time. So, they have these tires on, and the tread pattern was non-skid. All the tires around there were like non-skid, non-skid. No, that was the tread pattern. So somebody gets the great idea that let's um, push this car off this trailer onto the terrace, and then we can roll it into the reception area because I don't know if it ran or not, but no, even if it did, nobody knew how to start it or anything. So we're rolling it up the terrace, and as soon as it gets off the guy's truck, he hits the bricks. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't want to be there any longer than he has to. I don't blame him. So the thing starts rolling down the terrace, and nobody knows how to put the brakes on. And all these guys, nobody could really stop it. It was pretty good of a grade. So there was a gas or a kerosene taillight on it from like whatever 1927. So the thing rolls into another car down in the lot, and the gas light breaks off. So again, I'm crying, right? Completely crying. So I mean, this is not the way Alfred P. Sloan would do things, or Charles Kettering. So I start to research more and more about General Motors and everything. So the guy that founded General Motors, believe it or not, his name was William Crapo Durant. His real name, Crapo. So he gets he buys Buick from David Dunbar Buick. He buys Oldsmobile from REO Rolls, and they know him Oldsmobile. And then he buys Cadillac from, I forget who put together Cadillac. And then Pontiac at that time was Oakland, and then Chevrolet was named after this French driver, Jimmy Chevrolet. It's not, there was no T on it, Jimmy Chevrolet, so French. So he puts this together, and he was a lunatic. It was like 1914, something like that. So the country's really grown by leaps and bounds at this point. So Crapo was basically a businessman gambler. So he loses control of General Motors. The DuPont family bought it out. And I think about 5 years later, he buys it back from the DuPont family. And then he brings Alfred P. Sloan in, who was the CEO, going to be the CEO of General Motors, and Charles Kettering, who was the technical guy on General Motors, hence the Sloan Kettering Institute in New York. So I think, if memory serves me right, he gives Sloan like a couple $1,000,000 in a duffel bag and says, "Go buy some property in Detroit, and I want you to build us 4 buildings." That was the General Motors headquarters at the time. So he goes and he does it, right? So then Crapo loses it again, and Sloan just takes over. He's the guy that started the committee system, where you had to have committees approve models and everything. And then Kettering was the guy that was the mechanical wizard of everything. He made the first electric starter out of an NCR cash register motor, and it was all basically seat of the pants. And then I think he was the guy that started Frigidaire, and well, I don't know if he invented it or discovered it, but anyway, he understood where Freon would have cooling characteristics, so they started making Frigidaire air conditioners, and then air conditioning in cars, which was basically basically unheard of at the time. And then the locomotive division, General Motors locomotive division, was making these gigantic diesel locomotives, and it was a very diverse company. Delco Remy, all this stuff. So it was interesting how this American company worked, and then I'm working for the Germans, which everything's kind of just put together on the fly, which is hard for me to believe because this is a company with this really good reputation. But again, you're dealing with Germans, right? So they don't really do good with suggestions. And they don't really do good with listening to anybody that's not German. They even have a hard time listening to other Germans if they don't agree with what they said. So everybody in America says, you have to upgrade these cars. If you want to compete in the luxury market, you have to have power windows. And the Germans would never hear of power windows. No, we rolled the windows up. So then they said you have to have automatic transmissions. No. So finally, I think a bunch of Americans had to go over there and go, you can't compete with Cadillac and Lincoln if you don't start doing this shit. So they reluctantly start putting automatic transmissions in and air conditioning and cruise control, but they kind of dropped the ball on a lot of those items. And I'm going to keep that story to myself because I don't want to aggravate anybody at the company and possibly lose my pension. So, but if you want to come over, I'll tell you about all that in person. And it was just it was just an eye-opening experience for me because they did inherit the UAW from Studebaker because you couldn't come over, be a German company in the United States after the war. You had to be wholly owned by American companies. So Studebaker took Mercedes, or actually Daimler-Benz in North America, under their wing, and then MBNA was incorporated in '65, and Studebaker went out of business. So that's what happened there. But yeah, it was a very interesting to see the company grow, how fast it grew. And when I first started there, I think they were selling 35,000 cars a year. And when I left, I think it was, I don't know, quarter of a million a year. And they couldn't get enough of them. So, yeah, but there's so many stories with that. If I can think of any more, I'll let you know. But it was just a it was just a cool experience to grow up in that because when I started in Coolidge Avenue, everybody in the company was a gearhead. Everybody at General Motors higher up was a gearhead. Ed Cole was a gearhead. He was the president of General Motors at the time. And Bunky Knudsen was a total gearhead at the time. He was vice president and stuff. And John Z, of course, was a total gearhead. And then it went over to the same as our company and went over to the bean counters. And once the bean counters get in it, it's fucked. So Roger Smith was the Chevrolet bean counter. And the American companies were just used to having, like, I don't know what, 70% of the market share. So they could pretty much build whatever they wanted, and they know that the people would buy it because in America, people, even now, they'll only buy American because it's the patriotic thing to do. As foolish as that is to do, they'll only buy American stuff. So, and then when the safety stuff went in, where you had to have dual circuit brake cylinders and safety belts and padded dashboards in '67, that's when they started to go. And then once the government said they started to clamp down on emissions in '72 or '71, that was the death of the muscle car, because the muscle car had, you could go into a dealership and basically order a race car. You could order a high compression engine, which meant you could order a 10 to 1 compression, 11.5 to 1 compression, or you could even order a 12 to 1 compression motor in those days. And they had gas that would actually run those things. Now you couldn't run them, you got to put an additive in. Plus, you could order the rear end you wanted, you could order the horsepower you wanted, you could order the transmission you wanted. And once they did the emission controls, everybody had to lower compression to what everything is now, is 8.5 to 1. And it just took the muscle out of everything. And when the 455 came out, I'm a dinosaur with this, but there's, what we used to say in the old days, there's no substitute for cubic inches. When the 455 came out, everybody knew it's just a sheep in wolf's clothing. It wouldn't get out of its way. All it did is burn a lot of gas. So that's what happened with that. So that's my story for today. I know I probably bored a lot of you to death, but I enjoy doing it. So fuck you.